When I was in high school, every single one of my friends had someone to date, except for me. Yep, I was the only one who was single, and it really bothered me. I wanted nothing more than to have a boyfriend, but there was no one who was interested in me. I was way too shy to make a move on any of my crushes. So I just pretended to my friends that I preferred being single, and that there were some boys who were chasing me, but that I just wasn't keen. Obviously, I was lying. Now I'm in college, in another city, but we all still keep in touch. Every time we talk, they'd constantly talk about their latest dates, and it made me feel more and more jealous. I wanted a relationship so badly. Finally, my time came. I met a guy at college, and we started dating. Everything was going well, until I found out he'd cheated on me with 3 different girls in one night. I was devastated. But worse than that was the fact that our high school was having a reunion, and I'd told all my friends my boyfriend was coming. They couldn't wait to meet him. But now he wasn't my boyfriend anymore. I'd well and truly dumped him. There was no way I could turn up alone. So I came up with a brilliant idea. I'd just hire a boyfriend. I quickly did a Google search, and believe it or not, it didn't take long to find an ad from a man in my hometown. Jackpot. This guy called Rob was only $3 an hour. So cheap. I contacted him right away, and he agreed to be my one-night boyfriend the following day. He sounded nice enough, and I figured we could really pull this off. He came to pick me up at my parents' house the next day, and I got the biggest shock of my life. He was old. Old like my parents' age, kinda old. But what could I do? I'd promised my friends I was bringing my boyfriend, and there was no time left for any other options. So this guy would just have to do his job. It was seriously awkward. We had nothing in common, and he kept making all these dorky jokes in the car. I was almost shaking as we walked into the event. And of course, he took my hand and gave me a kiss on the cheek in front of everyone. My friends came running over, and Rob introduced himself as Josh, which was my ex's name. I could see my friends eyeing him up and down, and then Shelley came up to me and whispered that he looked older than her dad. I could feel myself blushing, and then it got worse. My friends were talking about Taylor Swift, and in front of everyone he said, "Who's that? Is she one of your friends?" Then an old song from the 80s came on, and he got up and started doing the most ridiculous dance moves. I was mortified. I tried to run off to the bathroom, but he grabbed my hand and made me dance with him. I couldn't wait to go home. My friends would probably never let me live this down. Eventually, we left, and as soon as we walked away, I heard my friends burst into fits of laughter. He drove me home, and I paid him. I felt so embarrassed and hoped I never had to see him again. But the next day, I got a text message. It was from Rob. He told me that he'd had so much fun and asked me if I wanted to go out again, but this time for free. I couldn't believe it. This old man liked me and wanted to date me? I tried to act as gently as I could and told him I was too busy and wished him a good life. I mean, sure, he was a nice guy, but he was way too old for me. A few months later, Shelley was having her 19th birthday, and it was the event of the year. There was no way I would let my friends laugh at me again. They constantly teased me about my old boyfriend. This time, I was determined to find a young, handsome guy to be my boyfriend. By that point, there were so many ads online for this kind of thing, so it was easy to find someone. Straight away, I was drawn to this guy called Callum. He sent me lots of photos and even asked me if I wanted to video chat. After FaceTiming with him, I felt so lucky. He was almost too good to be true, and it made me worry about his price. But he said to me, "Any price for you, sweetheart." I couldn't stop thinking about him and thought maybe he liked me too. Had I finally met a nice guy my own age? I met him just before the party, and I could tell straight away his appearance didn't let me down. He was even more handsome in real life. And when my friends met him, I could see how jealous they were of me. They practically had heart emojis popping out of their eyes. I just stood there smirking. I'd finally impressed them. But then, while we were dancing, the music suddenly stopped, and from the crowd, one of my friends came over to me, told me she needed to talk to me, then turned to Callum with a smirk. She said she'd met Callum before. I froze. I asked her where she'd met him, and she just winked at me and said that he'd been her rental boyfriend a few months ago. I seriously wanted the ground to swallow me whole. All my friends laughed at how fake I was. Suddenly, Callum stood up for me. He said it was true that he was a rental boyfriend, but that he actually really did love me, and that our relationship was real. Wow, I felt like my heart was melting. This was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for me. My friends looked stunned. After that, we started officially dating, and he was so sweet to me. I'd never been so happy in my life. And of course, he quit his rental boyfriend job right away. However, the problem didn't stop. He invited me over to his house one day to meet his parents, and when he introduced me to his dad, I thought I was going to pass out. His dad was Rob. We both acted like it was the first time we were meeting each other, but honestly, I couldn't even look in his wife's eyes. I know I did nothing wrong, but the fact that her husband has feelings for me made me feel so guilty. How is it possible that both son and dad had done the same job? This was seriously the most awkward moment of my entire life. Later that night, after I'd gone home, Rob kept calling me, but I didn't answer. What was he trying to tell me? No matter what it was, I didn't care. I didn't want to talk to him. Now I don't know what to do. I love Callum so much and don't want to lose him.
Hi, I'm Izzy, and my grandparents brought me up. It's not that my parents weren't around at all, it's just that they worked in New York, and, well, they were workaholics, so I ended up staying with my grandparents. My sister, Beatrice, or B as we all call her, lived with my parents. I don't know why this was exactly. It just kinda happened. My parents visited every Christmas and occasionally during spring break, but not having them around was normal for me. Then one summer, my parents showed up with B and told me they were moving to town and we were all going to live together. At first, this was weird as I was so used to barely seeing them, but then I decided it could be good, right? But, well, living with a little sister was more complicated than I thought. It's kind of bothersome. In fact, B even pushed me, an average drama-free girl at school, into a bunch of nonsense scandals. B's a sweet kid, but she's on the shy side and she can be a bit clingy. Probably because she still needed some time to fit into this new place, so she followed me and clung on to me all day long. But I just didn't get why she had to copy everything I did. I wore ripped skinny jeans, so she bought the exact same pair. I wore glitter pink lip gloss, so she did too. I got a new phone for my birthday, and she begged our parents until they caved and gave her one too. That kinda sucked, as I'd waited for ages for a decent phone, and she got one just by nagging. She had her own bedroom, but each night she came into my room and made me tell her stories about everyone at school, as she said this would help her make new friends faster. We'd chat about school, boys, friends, girl stuff. Then she'd fall asleep in my room. She stayed here pretty much every night, so in the end, our parents bought us bunk beds. But she then went and bragged about everything I told her to her classmates, so they'd think she's cool, since she got to hang out with seniors and knew their stories. One time, she leaked out the secret that my best friend Lee had a crush on Paul, and she told her friends that I was surely gonna be spring queen at the next prom. What? I didn't even think about trying out for that. Never! I'm not interested in that kind of attention. And obviously, the rumors got out. Lee stormed up to me, yelling and all, saying she never wanted to be friends again. I tried to explain things to her, but she didn't listen. And for the rest of the day, every time I walked across the hallway, the popular girls would smirk at me and say things like, "Who do you think you are?" Like, seriously, as if you could be spring queen? I hated this. I just wanted to have a normal, quiet life at school. I didn't like this attention, nor did I have any longing to be spring queen. This made me so mad. So later in the afternoon, I stormed into B's classroom during recess, dragged her aside, and told her to stop ruining my life with her big mouth. I didn't have much time to talk to her about exactly what had happened because I had to return to class, but I made sure to make my point and threw her a dirty look before I left. She looked pretty scared. I stomped back to class, but my tantrum didn't last long because during English Lit, my teacher paired me on a group project with 2 of my friends and Andy, the cutest guy ever. This was the perfect excuse to use the group study time to organize a meetup at my house. The plan was set. I just needed to come home, put on my cutest outfit, and wait for them to come over. I was so nervous that I didn't really mind about the feud with my sister anymore. I excitedly told her about Andy coming over, and she helped me tidy up my room and braid my hair. They arrived, and studying didn't last long. Soon we were watching movies and playing games. Then B suggested we play 7 Minutes in Heaven. That's so childish, but the others seemed up for it. Besides, I figured it could work in my favor with Andy. We spun the bottle to decide, and when it was Andy's turn, B asked to spin it for him. Then she winked over at me and Andy. Then, to my horror, the bottle pointed at her. What was that? Is she stealing my crush too? This little brat. She and Andy went into the closet, and after 7 excruciating minutes, they walked out looking all smiley. I was so mad, but I kept my cool until they left. Then I screamed at B that she was a horrible, sneaky girl and to stay away from me. It got so heated, Mom had to come and tell me to stop. I slammed my bedroom door shut and even put my dresser in front of it so B couldn't come in. The next day, she tried apologizing to me, but I ignored her. She even left a candy bar on my pillow, but I just chucked it in the trash. To make matters worse, Andy approached me at school and went on about the fun he'd had at mine and how cool B was. What? So what exactly did those 2 do in the closet? This was awful. Then prom day came. I didn't have a date. Lee still wasn't talking to me, and trying to avoid B in my own house was draining. Then Lee called me up excitedly and told me Paul had asked her to prom. I was so happy for her, and we made up. She invited me over to get ready for prom at hers. I packed my dress, my makeup, but my eyebrow pencil was missing. I mumbled, "Ugh, B," as she must have taken mine again. I knew she was at swimming practice, so I went through her drawer to find my makeup stuff. Nothing. Then I spotted something under her pillow. It looked like the end of a black pencil. This must be it. I took it out, but it wasn't an eyebrow pencil, just a normal pen. It was in the middle of a notebook. So curious. I pulled it out. That's when I glimpsed my name on the open page. So I picked it up to see what it was. It's her diary. I read through the first few pages. She said she loved me very much and that she was happy that she finally got to live in the same house as me. I found a specific page that was a little ripped. It was the day I yelled at her. I saw tears dried out on her words. She wrote how she really thought I was very beautiful and would win the Spring Queen title, and how she just wanted to help me and Andy get together, so she suggested the 7 Minutes game. And she tried to aim the bottle at me, but it went wrong. And that when she was in the closet with Andy, she was only saying nice things about me to him. And she also found out that Andy had feelings for me. Also, she wrote that sleeping alone was so scary, but she didn't want to bother me anymore. She said she'd ruined everything and wished she could move back to her old house. I felt so guilty, and I just cried all the way to Lee's place and later told her everything. I was not in the mood for prom anymore, so even though everyone complimented me on my dress, I couldn't enjoy myself. Andy came forward and asked me to dance, but I couldn't quit thinking about B. I apologized to Andy for my bad mood, and he was so understanding. We ended up taking a walk outside, and I vented to him about how I'd misunderstood my sister. Then, suddenly, I spotted her with friends at the photo booth at the entrance. They looked like they were having so much fun, except for her. She looked so sad. I grabbed her arm from behind. She turned around, shocked, then quickly stepped back and went to leave, but I stopped her and told her I was sorry. I hugged her, and we both cried, and continuously said sorry to each other. Then I suddenly heard my name on the mic inside the venue. She then said, "Go, go! They must be crowning you as Spring Queen right now! Told you so!" Turns out I wasn't Spring Queen, but I did make prom court, which I guess is kinda cool. I was wrong to ever be mad at B. She never meant to cause any harm. I know that now. Later that evening, Lee and Paul came over and thanked B, as it was basically down to her that they were now together. Then Lee winked at Andy, who was standing next to me, and said, "You should also thank B, because it looks like we're having another couple here." Talk about awkward. So we both just shrugged it off and pretended not to understand what she meant. We spent the rest of the night dancing and having a great time. It felt so good to have my best friend and my little sis back in my life. I've now realized that having Bella with me all the time isn't so bad. Yes, she's annoying at times, but all she wanted was to have her big sis around. And I guess I have to admit that I like having my little sis around too.
Hi, my name's Crystal, and my family are super wealthy. I have never needed to work, but I wanted to. So me and my friend Alice decided to become entrepreneurs, and my dad helped fund our startup. We both love shopping, so we created a really cool app that helps you choose the latest trends to suit your body. And unlike my friends, I was single, but I didn't mind. In fact, I loved how free I felt. However, there was just one small problem. My parents weren't okay with this. They were desperate for me to find someone and get married, and that's when they decided to take matters into their own hands. They started setting me up on blind dates. I told them I could easily find my own date, but they said that whoever I dated had to come from a good, wealthy family. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't even interested in dating, especially as I'd had some really bad relationships in college. That's also why my parents wanted to find someone for me, as they'd hated the guys I'd dated before and didn't trust me that I wouldn't make the same mistakes again. I refused to go, but then my dad said something that sent chills up my spine. Okay, don't go, but then your startup is over. I'll take away all your funding. Wait, no, that couldn't happen. We'd worked so hard to build the app, and the only way we could afford it was with my dad's help. Fine, I'll go, but I can't promise I'll like these guys, I said. I went on the date, and then many more after that, and I quickly became an expert at making sure those boys wouldn't be interested in me. And yet still, I was keeping my parents happy by going on the dates. It was a win-win. But before I became a pro at this blind date game, there were many awkward and hilarious situations that I had to go through. On one of my first dates, we met up in the lounge of a hotel. All I knew was that the guy Trent owned the hotel and that his family were a big name in some hotel chains in the area. I was running late, and the parking lot in the basement was jam-packed. I finally managed to find an empty spot, and I was rushing to get to it. But then out of nowhere, another car also appeared and was heading for the same spot. We ended up bumping into each other. Both our cars got badly scratched, and mine even had a dent. Oh no, my baby. I was so upset. This was my Porsche that my parents had bought me for my sweet 16th. And even though I have a ton of other cars at home, this was my most favorite. Who would dare to hurt my child like this? I stomped out of the car and started yelling at the guy. He climbed out of his car and he was wearing a hat, so I couldn't really see his face, but I guessed he was younger than me. Could he be the valet parking boy or something? But then he started speaking and said that it was my fault because I'd been going in the wrong direction, and that he had every right to make me pay for the damage done to his car. What? He's the one who should have been paying for the damage on my car. Well, that just made me even more furious. And then he had the cheek to say he was in a rush, and he handed me his business card and said we'd settle this later. I snatched that card out of his hand and threw it in my bag without even looking. That would be my lawyer's problem, not mine. And to make matters worse, he had taken the parking spot. So now I still had to find somewhere else to park. It took me ages. And by then, I figured my date wouldn't have even waited for me. I arrived at the table that had been reserved for us, and of course he was already sitting there. From afar, I was impressed. He looked like a total babe. Maybe my parents' taste wasn't so bad after all, and his outfit was on point. In fact, I'd seen it somewhere before. Must have been a new trend. I said hi to him and sat down, but he just started laughing, and after like 1 minute of smiling at me, he said hi back. Then he started to introduce himself, and I realized who he was. He was the guy I just bumped into in the parking lot. Oh my God, this couldn't be happening. This was too awkward. I pretended to look for something in my bag and then quickly glanced at his name card. Yep, it said general manager on it. Oh man, I was doomed. I tried my best to act like nothing had happened. I mean, maybe he didn't recognize me. Ugh, who am I kidding? Of course he did. And as the date went on, he kept teasing me about it, saying that the parking spot was reserved for hotel staff. I was kind of bummed. I mean, he was so cute, and I'd completely ruined my chances. I felt bad for creating such a bad impression and begged him not to tell my parents. He agreed that it would be our little secret, and after that things were better. We actually got really close and even became good friends. You're probably wondering why we didn't hit it off. Well, turns out he's actually gay. He trusted me enough to come out to me. That's how close we were. He hadn't even told his parents yet. And that's why these blind dates are as much of a nuisance for him as they are for me. So, he's the one who helped me come up with the idea to act like a bad girl, to turn off the other guys on dates. All based on his actual experience of our date. Ever since then, whenever I went on a blind date, I was intentionally late so that I'd make the worst impression possible. I'd wear my bad girl outfit, which was an oversized black shirt, ripped jeans, and dirty sneakers. And of course, I'd always chew gum. Make sure to have this annoyed look on my face all the time. This drove rich guys crazy, and none of them ever asked for a second date with me. But one time, it didn't go to plan. The guy I was on a date with, Corey, he saw right through me and even had the guts to confront me about what I was trying to do. It made me so mad, and it was the worst date ever. But still, he told his parents that it went well, and he wanted to see me again. He surely wanted to pick a fight with me. Since he was the only guy that I'd been on a blind date with that had given positive feedback, my parents were super stoked upon hearing this, and they made me continue seeing him. Otherwise, they said they'd take away my cars and cancel my credit cards. I couldn't stand him. He was your typical bad boy player type who thought he owned the world. He didn't even work. His dad just made up a position for him in the family business. What a spoiled brat. And we didn't even actually date. He just rang me up anytime he wanted and made me go to places with him, as if I was just an accessory to him. It's such a waste of time, but what else could I do? One day, we were at the country club to celebrate his dad's 60th. It was so boring, so I snuck outside for a bit. He caught me playing on my phone, and he literally snatched it out of my hand and teased me with it. He thought it was hilarious until he realized that I'd been texting with Trent. Suddenly, he looked really distant. Then he asked if I was close to this guy. I didn't even have a chance to respond. He quickly returned my phone and just left me standing there. I didn't get it. Was he jealous or something? After that, he disappeared for a few weeks, which was really odd because normally he was all up in my face all the time. My parents were worried, and they forced me to go check to see if he was okay. Why is he so bothersome? I didn't want to go at all, but still, I had to. I got to his apartment, and the whole place smelled like alcohol. I mumbled in annoyance, "Hey, are you an alcoholic or something? I thought you'd maybe been sick, but okay then, I see." Then he said, "This is all because of you." I was confused. What had I done? I was about to leave when I noticed something. It was a crumpled photo of Trent and Corey. Oh my God. Am I seeing things or what? I picked it up. Corey glanced over and sighed. After a really awkward silence, Corey told me that Trent was his ex. What? So Corey was gay too? They broke up because they had planned to run away together because neither of them were brave enough to come out to their parents. But then Corey had bailed on the plan when his dad had offered him a position in the company and a huge inheritance. He couldn't give that up. Trent had been so hurt because Corey had chosen money over their relationship. It's been 2 years since then, and Corey regrets it a lot. But Trent won't even give him the time of day anymore. That's when Corey asked me to help him speak to Trent again. Oh God, I don't know if I should do it because I don't want Trent to date such a bad guy again. Plus, maybe Trent will just think I'm taking Corey's side and cut me out of his life too. But what if Corey really has changed? So, in the first part of my story, my parents set me up on some blind dates. First, there was Trent, who ended up being gay, so that didn't work out. And then I met Corey, who wasn't far from being called my worst enemy. We hated each other, but still, he made me go on dates with him. And then it turned out he was also gay, and that Trent was actually his ex. Corey begged me to help him get Trent back. So let's see how Trent will react to this. I decided to casually ask Trent about his past relationships and stuff, to see if he'd bring Corey up. He said he'd been so badly betrayed by his ex and that he still hadn't forgiven him for it. Clearly, he was talking about Corey. I didn't know what to do. It was killing me to see how miserable they both were. Seeing how Corey desperately wanted Trent back made me realize that he had changed. If he was given one more chance, he would never risk losing Trent a second time. So I decided to help them get back together. I told Corey about it first, and I have never seen him look so happy. And after that, we started getting on pretty well, because we didn't have to pretend to be dating anymore. We could just be ourselves. And guess what? He's not actually that bad. In fact, he was just like me, having to put up with his parents setting him up on stupid dates. He even told my parents that I was such an amazing girl. And after that, my parents started to respect me more. The only thing was, I couldn't let Trent know about my plan. In fact, Trent didn't even know that Corey and I knew each other. But from the way Trent spoke about Corey, I knew he still had feelings for him too. So all I had to do was set up a date for them and let fate handle the rest. I asked Trent to meet me for dinner and arranged with Corey to secretly show up later. But as soon as Trent saw Corey, his face went bright red, and within a second flat, he was furious. He stood up and started yelling at us both and even pushed Corey out of the way as he stormed out. Every single person in the restaurant was staring at us, and I even heard some old couple whispering that I was clearly two-timing these guys, and I'd just been caught, and how embarrassing that was. Trent was really mad at me after that, so I had to try and get him to forgive me, and at the same time, try and persuade him to give it another go with Corey. I knew that Trent had a sweet tooth, so I started making cupcakes and cookies and leaving them on his doorstep. He never answered the door no matter how many times I knocked, and one time I left a 3-tiered chocolate cake at his door, and I overheard his neighbors talking. One of them said, "Oh, when will she stop? What a desperate gold digger." And then the other looked at me and started shaking her head. She said, "She clearly has no dignity. What kind of girl chases a boy like that?" I was so embarrassed. I realized how needy I must have looked, so I ran back to my car, but before I got in, Trent came running after me. He had heard the neighbors too, and he'd realized how hard I'd been trying. He said to me, "Crystal, stop it already. You keep trying to fix things that were never your fault to begin with." Well, at least he'd spoken to me again. I told him I was sorry, and I just missed hanging out with him. So he said he forgave me, but there was one more thing he wanted. I replied to him with the biggest smile on my face. "Sure, anything for you, Trent. I'm all yours for today." "Okay then, let's go to the theme park. It's been a while, and I need something to relieve all this stress," he said. I'm pretty sure I started to sweat a little upon hearing that because I'm literally petrified of heights. So we went there and went on all the rides that Trent wanted to, and I had to close my eyes the whole time and spent most of the day clinging onto him out of fear. But Trent seemed to have a great time, and I was just glad to make him happy again. That was all that mattered. After that day, I was able to bring up Corey again, and I told him that he didn't have to take him back, but maybe he could just open his heart a little and give Corey a chance to explain himself. He reluctantly agreed, just so that I'd stop going on and on about it. And he did give him a chance. Well, not really a chance, but he did keep the gifts Corey sent instead of sending them right back. And he stopped blocking his number. They even started talking again. Anytime Trent replied to Corey, Corey would call me and tell me, and he'd be so excited. And they even met up to have a serious chat about what had happened. Now there's no more bad blood between them, and all that was left to do was for Corey to make a move to win Trent back. Corey started to shower Trent in love. He even bought him an annual pass to the theme park and backstage passes to his favorite singer. But still, Trent wouldn't budge. He was being nice to Corey, but he didn't seem to want to date him again, which was so weird. What was going on? Had Trent met another guy already? One day, I met up with Trent to talk over a drink. I jokingly asked him, "Hey, are you seeing another guy? What about Corey? I mean, I know he hurt you in the past, but he's changed now. And honestly, you two were miserable before. Now that he's back in your life, you seem so much happier." I waited for him to reply, but he just stared at me, which was really weird and it made me blush. Had I just stepped out of line? I said to him, "Well then, come on, spill the beans. Who is he?" Then he smirked and downed his drink, and he said, "The reason I'm so much happier is because, yes, I have met someone." "I knew it!" I interrupted. Then I realized he wasn't finished speaking. He continued, "But it's not a guy. It's a girl. And she's the reason why I can't be with Corey again. She made me realize that I'm actually bisexual." And I was surprised. I mean, I really loved Corey. So this girl kind of came out of nowhere and has blown me away with how incredible she is. I couldn't believe it. "Oh my God, who is she?" I said, laughing. And then he went bright red and said, "Crystal, come on. It's you. Duh." What? I was too shocked to even reply. My heart was beating so fast. Trent liked me? Honestly, I was so confused. I mean, Trent was gay. Why would he like me? I felt so awkward and I could feel his eyes on me. I knew he was waiting for me to say something. I looked up for a second and our eyes met, and the tension in the air was so intense. I just couldn't stand it. I made up an excuse, saying I felt tired and that I needed to go home. Trent looked a bit upset, but still offered to drive me home. I turned him down, though, and said I'd take an Uber. I just needed some alone time. I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. It actually made sense. We had so much fun together, but because I'd known he was gay, I'd never really looked at him as boyfriend material. But what if he wasn't gay? I mean, could we be together? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I liked him too. But I had to forget about those feelings because what about Corey? I couldn't just steal the love of his life like that. He'd be heartbroken. I didn't sleep a wink that night. All kinds of questions constantly popped up in my head. The next day, Trent texted me first, asking, "Did you sleep well last night? I hope what I said last night didn't keep you up all night," with a smiley face. I replied, "Actually, I was awake the whole night. I've thought a lot about my feelings, but Trent, I don't want to hurt Corey. We can't do this." He then replied, "Don't think too much. That doesn't matter. Just answer this one question. Do you have feelings for me? Just say yes or no." I don't know what was going through my mind, but at that moment, I guess I was just tired of things being so complicated. So I typed yes, then hit send. Okay, so now Trent knew I had feelings for him too, and he sounded so happy. He said I shouldn't worry and that we could work this out as long as our feelings were mutual. A few days later, Trent said he'd meet up with Corey to talk to him. I was way too anxious to ask Trent how it went, but then at midnight, Corey called me. I was terrified to answer. I knew he would yell at me, but to my complete surprise, he didn't. He sounded calm and said Trent had told him everything and that if I truly had feelings for him, I should go for it. He said, "I've spent years away from the one I love, and I don't want the same thing to happen to you and Trent. It's too painful. You both deserve to be happy. Plus, you helped me so much. Thanks to you, I managed to clear things up with Trent, and just having him back in my life, even as a friend, is good enough for me. I'll find someone else, and it'll make me so happy to know you two are happy." I was so touched by what he said, I couldn't even respond. I just started crying and told him he'd definitely meet someone amazing soon. Even he sounded choked up, but he tried to hide it by laughing and calling me a crybaby. Now that I had his support, I decided to give it a go with Trent. We went on a date, and it was so fun. Seeing as it wasn't our first time hanging out, we were so comfortable around each other. And now that I knew he was interested in me, I noticed how much he gave me butterflies. It was amazing. Now we're officially a couple. Turns out my parents are pretty good at playing Cupid, right?
Hey, my name is Erin, and as you can see, I'm just your normal 18-year-old college girl. But my friends who know me well know that I'm not a girly girl. If given the choice of a shopping trip or beer pong, well, then there's no contest. All through high school, I was known as the prank queen. One time, this girl teased me about my sneakers, so I put a real-life spider in her lunchbox. She totally freaked out. It was so funny. Another time, my teacher gave me a totally unjust C on my essay, so when she wasn't looking, I placed her coffee mug upside down. As soon as she picked up the mug, coffee spilled all over the table and her clothes. I ended up with a week's worth of detention for that, but it was so worth it. So, yeah, even though I was out of high school now, my mischievous nature wasn't going anywhere. I didn't even feel like I needed to change or be more mature because my life was still going perfect. I always had my longtime boyfriend Zach and my bestie Jace on my side. We went to the same college together. Me and Jace even moved out to live independently. Trust me, college life was worth 12 years of waiting. I'm a sociable and active girl, while Zach is pretty handsome and great at sports, so we soon became a popular and beloved couple at college. We were even given prom king and prom queen crowns for freshmen. I could see people admired us any time we were together. It was like our love was a typical relationship that they always wished for. Only I knew that deep down inside, Zach's feelings for me were changing. We seemed to argue all the time, and at the root of it was the fact that I wasn't gentle like most other girls. Ugh. He used to see me as the most interesting and attractive girl in the world. What happened? Once, he took me to a party to celebrate his basketball team's win. We cheered a lot, and at a point I was so excited that I jumped on the table and drank wine with the boys. Everyone around was cheering with joy, but Zach wasn't happy. Then later, when I was getting in his car ready for him to drive me home, I asked him, "What's wrong? Aren't you happy you won?" He replied, "You're an embarrassment. No one else's girlfriend was down in wine and cheering at the top of their voice. Why can't you just be gentle, like your friend Jace?" I was fuming. So fuming, in fact, that I got out of his car, slammed the door shut, and walked home. It was such an outrage comparing me with another girl. Not to mention that Jace is the complete opposite of me. She's super quiet and introverted. You know what they say, opposites attract. This is so true, as Jace and I are the best of friends. But there's no way I could be gentle like her. If he wanted me to be more like her, why didn't he consider himself to be as sweet and smart as her boyfriend, Jay? I arrived home to find Jay sitting in tears on her bed. Oh, my gentle, weak girl. That night must be Black Friday for both of us. So I hugged her and asked her what was wrong. She replied, "Jay's changed, Aaron. He doesn't like my meekness and wants a more vibrant relationship. In fact, he wants me to be more like you. He said I should be active and strong like you are. Now I don't know what to do." I said, "Oh, God, boys are so confusing." You know what? Zach said the same thing to me. He wants me to be gentle like you. Jace looked at me with surprising eyes. Really? He did? I know, so hilarious, right? We have to do something to make them realize our true value. But what can we do? And once again, my prank-minded brain came up with an extraordinary idea. And I told her, "I know, Jace. We can swap boyfriends." "No, Aaron, I don't like Zach. And from when you have eyes for Jay?" Hey, don't get it wrong. I just want my Zach. So here's the plan. We will annoy our boyfriends so they won't want to hang out with us for a few days. Then we'll take this time to strike and flirt with each other's boyfriends. Then, just when they thought they're getting close to us, we'll be super annoying. Then they'll realize just how amazing their actual girlfriends are. Talk about an amazing plan, huh? I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Jace was hesitant at first, but she eventually came up with my prank. As usual, our boys would soon come back as their old selves. I put my part of the plan into action by asking Zach over to watch the new episode of his favorite show on Netflix. Then, during the show, I ate popcorn really loudly, then continued to make comments and laugh while he was trying to concentrate. Eventually, he snapped and said, "Are you crazy? I'm trying to watch this." I replied, "What? You can't stand me anymore or something?" We argued a little bit, then he said, "You know what? You're annoying. Why can't you be nice, delicate, and gentle for just a moment?" Then he stormed out of the room and left. I immediately texted Jace. Mission completed. As for Jace, she went out with Jay, but whenever he asked her what she wanted to do or eat, etc., she replied whatever to everything. It soon drove him crazy because he didn't know what to do to please her. That was classic. When Jace kept shaking her head when he gave her options for what to eat, he got furious and drove her straight home. OMG, I couldn't stop laughing. So the first step was successful. Next, we needed to approach each other's boyfriends. A couple of days later, I found an excuse to meet Jay. He was a computer genius, so I messaged him on Facebook. "Hi Jay, you know a lot about computers, right? Can you help me, as my laptop won't connect to the Wi-Fi and I have an assignment due?" Then he replied, Sure. Just take a picture of it and send it over." So I replied, "Can I bring it to your place? You gotta help me. I don't know what to do." Well then, of course, he said yes. So I wore a cute outfit and went over there. I kept touching his arm and praising him. Then, when he became more open to me, I started to tell him how lonely and empty I was, as Zach and I were over. "Oh yeah? How come?" He raised an eyebrow. I sighed out. "He thinks I'm too loud and boisterous." I tried to fake my tears. "Am I annoying, Jay?" He was surprised. "No, you're not. You're an active, outgoing, and interesting girl. Don't let his judgment bother you." Ha! So my tears worked. So I just pretended to cry harder. He frantically said he knew how to cheer me up. Then he took me to the amusement park. I laughed loudly in the middle of the roller coaster queue, let my ice cream smudge my face, and intentionally didn't wipe it clean. Then I demanded he win me a teddy on the beanbag throwing stall game. But every time he threw the beanbag, I shouted out and clung onto his arm. I knew boys hate being stuck and nagging all day. Like, really, really hate it. Soon, he would realize how awesome Jace was. Talking about Jace, she came to find Zach at the gym, but pretended like it was just a chance meeting. She asked him to show her how a treadmill worked, then used the same way as mine for Zach to ask her out. They went to the cinema to cheer her up. She refused to see the action film he was longing to see, as it was too noisy, said no to any movie he suggested, then eventually ended up in a chick flick. But right at the climax of the film, she complained it was too dark and crowded in there, and made him leave early. How ridiculous! LOL. He must be so annoyed. Then I told her to hit Zach where it hurt, his basketball match. Jace convinced him to take her along to his game, but she just sat there scrolling through her phone instead of watching the match. She didn't cheer him when he won a point, and immediately after the game finished, she asked him to take her home, causing him to miss the post-game gathering. Good work, Jace. He'd come running back to me in no time. I know you're probably thinking this plan was crazy, but it really worked. Jace showed up on our doorstep with flowers for Jace. Their love story had been given the refreshment it needed. Now, I just had to wait for Zach to realize what he's been missing. Only, to my horror, Zach wasn't messaging me. He was still messaging Jace. She ended up sending a picture of her with Jay and told him she was happy with her boyfriend and didn't have time for annoying people like him. Then the next day, Jace arrived home all flustered. She told me that Zach had been waiting for her outside of her class, then told her he wanted a chance to take her on a date. What? He was technically still my boyfriend. How could he do this to me? Worse still, he was ignoring all of my messages. So I showed up at his house and wouldn't budge until he answered the door. He looked sheepish as he said, "Aaron, our relationship hit a dead end. You're acting ridiculous. And I know you hung out with another guy behind my back.
Meanwhile, a wonderful girl came to see me play basketball instead of you. She's the girl for me, not you.
At this point, I had to say the truth. Zach, you don't know what you're talking about right now. Listen, it was all just a setup so you could see what you were missing. It's worked for Jace. Her relationship is stronger than ever. And to my surprise, he replied,
I know. I overheard you discussing it with Jace in the library. At first, I found you so cute because you were trying to save our love, and I just wanted to please you, so I pretended not to know. But then, I realized something. I don't love you anymore. Instead, I love Jace, and thinking about it, I guess I have for a while. She's like a little, arrogant cat that I want to pamper and take care of. You know, I've always liked cats.
What? She's not even arrogant. She only acted that way as part of the plan, I shouted.
I don't care. All I know is I love her, not you.
Ugh! I can't believe it. What have I done? Because of my stupid prank, I've lost my boyfriend to my best friend. What am I meant to do now? Hey, it's me, Erin again. I'm here to tell you the concluding part of my story. So, I came up with a genius idea to swap boyfriends with my bestie, Jace, and mess things up to make our current boyfriends appreciate us more. Only my plan backfired massively when my boyfriend Zach decided he loved Jace, not me. Standing on Zach's doorstep having him tell me he didn't love me anymore was so humiliating, especially as a bunch of college kids were hanging out nearby and could hear everything. I yelled at him. We've been together for 3 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you? He replied,
I know, and we've had some great times together, but we've grown apart. Besides, I know Jace loves me too.
Geez, Zach, she doesn't. It was all part of the plan.
Nah, before all that, she told me she was tired of Jay, and she really loves me, but she couldn't do that to you, or to Jay.
What? Unbelievable! I made this plan work for her, but all along, she'd been playing me and my boyfriend. She'd ruined my relationship behind my back and been fake to me all this time? Now she was playing happily ever after with Jay while my boyfriend was pining after her. I stormed out of there, but going home was the last place I wanted to be, so I ended up at the park. I sat there thinking things through. I couldn't just leave things like this. Both Zach and Jay needed to know about Jace's true face. Fueled by my anger and humiliation, I rushed off to find Jay. Then I told him everything. He looked completely shocked as I told him how the plan backfired, as now Jace has feelings for Zach and was just using him. I expected him to get upset or something, but instead, he just looked angry and shouted at me.
Erin, you're such a bad friend. I've always loved Jace, and I know she loves me too. Stop trying to wreck other people's happiness because your own love life sucks.
I stood there speechless, then watched as he walked off. OMG. That did not go as expected. Is that all people thought of me? That I was some bitter, jealous jerk? All I tried to do was save Jace and Jay's relationship, and it worked, didn't it? But now, I didn't know what was going on anymore. Sighing, I realized that I was wrong to confront Jay without talking to Jace first. For all I knew, Zach could have been lying. I mean, the guy was completely delusional. It just hurt so much that he didn't love me anymore. Instead, he loved my best friend. As much as this sucked, I knew I was wrong to blame Jace for this before hearing her out. Maybe Jay was right. I was a bad friend. I wanted to find Jace, but Jay must have got to her first, as she was never in our room anymore. Then a friend of ours told me Jace had moved back home. OMG, she'd moved out and not even told me. I tried catching up with her after classes, but she avoided me at all costs. Ugh, this sucked. I'd had enough of this. So one day, I stopped her at the classroom door and said, "We need to talk." She tried to walk away, so I grabbed her arm. But she replied, "There's nothing to talk about." How could she act so flippant when she had everything and I was left with nothing? So I shouted at her, "Excuse me, you ruined our plan? Now you have everything. You have your boyfriend back, and my boyfriend wants you, not me. Not only do they both now hate me, but you moved out without even telling me. Like an ending for our friendship? I know I didn't handle things that well, and I'm sorry for that. But I was hurting, Jace. And you've been the worst. So stop being so selfish and fix it up." Everyone was gawping at us, and Jace started blushing. Then she hissed at me, "Let's talk about it later. Not here." This only made me angrier, as I knew she had absolutely no intention of actually talking to me. Raging, I yanked back her ponytail. She yelped out, "What are you doing? Get off!" Then who should appear but Zach? Ugh! He pulled me off her, then hugged her. Then he shouted at me.
When will you grow up and think about your words and behavior?
I was shocked. Now he was on her side. Jeez. This guy had ditched me for my best friend. What was he expecting from me? Sunshine and unicorns? Suddenly, Jay appeared and saw Zach hugging Jace. Shocked, he said,
What's going on here? Jace, is this real? You and him? So what Aaron said was true all along?
Jace moved away from Zach and said, "Jay, I'm sorry. It wasn't meant to be like this." He gave a nod of his head, then replied,
I trusted you, but it seems like it's not worth it.
After that, he left. Jace looked really confused and embarrassed, which, I'm not gonna lie, made me feel a little bit satisfied. Also, Zach was not a fool and got angry about how she'd moved away from him. I left them to their heated discussion and went into class. Good. Now her love life was a mess, and it was my turn to fix mine. I had to bring Zach back to me on my own. No one could help me now. So one day, at his basketball match with another school's team, I asked the cheerleader team to let me in the rooster mascot suit. It was so stuffy in there, but it'd be worth it, right? I would surprise him by running to hug him and celebrate when the team wins. He would definitely be touched and see that I'm always by his side cheering and watching him. So as planned, I ran down to embrace Zach as he scored the winning shot for the team. I tried to kiss him, but I forgot that I was in the form of a rooster. This made all the audience laugh. Zach tried to run away, but I chased after him and I stumbled. The rooster head fell off and everyone saw me. This time, the laughter and screams were even louder, but I just saw Zach looking at me with embarrassed and disappointed eyes. Talk about humiliating. Worse still, he didn't even help me up, just shook his head, then walked off. At that moment, I just wanted to melt into the ground. But then Jay rushed over and helped me to my feet. Jay drove me home, and he said,
Why did you have to embarrass yourself like that? And for a person who doesn't deserve you?
I replied, He's my boyfriend.
He isn't anymore. I know it hurts like crazy, Aaron. But sometimes we need to let go of things that no longer belong to us. Don't lose your self-worth for unworthy things.
I looked up at him with teary eyes. So, you don't want Jace back?
Nah, she's made it pretty clear that she wants him, not me. And I'm not going to be second best to anyone. Besides, she lied to me, and I'm not about that.
I guess you're right, I sighed. It just hurts so much.
Aaron, you're a strong girl. You'll get through this. But please promise me one thing, though. No more crazy ideas to try and win him back.
I know. I managed a laugh. When I got home, I thought about what Jay said. I guess he had a point. No matter how hard I tried to pull Zach back, he still turned away from me. And the same with Jace. I tried to fix things with her, and only ended up making everything worse. Thinking about it, Zach wasn't right for me. He wanted me to change who I was just to fit in with his life better. That wasn't right. I wanted a boyfriend who was proud of being seen with me, not embarrassed. And for Jace, she'd lied to me, and then she hadn't even respected me enough to talk to me before moving out. She wasn't a true friend. I knew that now. As the weeks passed, I finally got over everything. About Jace and Zach, I still see them around campus, but we don't talk. I heard they are a couple now, but the boys in the basketball club don't like her very much because she never lets Zach go out after matches with them. She also never dances and cheers happily for their victory. Well, that's not my problem now anyway. Ha! As for Jay and I, we're getting closer. I guess we bonded over our broken hearts. Also, it turns out we're far more similar than we realized. We started to hang out more, and then yesterday I suggested that we should go to the amusement park. His face was serious for a second, but then we both burst into laughter. I apologized to him for being ridiculous before, and he said, "Never mind. I love your positive vibes." I smiled happily and said, "Don't worry. This time I won't distract you while you're trying to win me a teddy." Then we both laughed. We're not officially a couple yet, but I can feel something between us. But there's no rush. I'm living in the moment, and it's pretty darn great. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have an amusement park to get to.
Hey guys, I'm Vanessa, and I want to tell you about my first love. So, do you all remember your first love? Yes, right? I mean, come on. How could you ever forget that first time butterflies in the tummy feeling, hand holding, and that kiss? In the heat of first love, it's easy to believe this will last forever and be a true fairy tale. Only so many first loves lead to a messy breakups that turn into a nightmare. My first love was with a boy named Julian, but you'll have to stick around to find out if our love story was a fairy tale dream or a fairy tale doom. Julian and I started off as friends, best friends. He lived across the street from me and our families were close. We hung out all the time, so much so that our parents teased that we'd get married one day. At the time I thought, no way, but we were just kids back then. Then, when I was about 10, I started to look at him differently. He was so cute and sweet, and I thought about him all the time. He liked me too, right? I mean, he bought me my favorite candy, let me play video games with him, and stuck up for me when these boys from school teased me. And then when I was 15, Julian and I were at our favorite spot. It was a really big old tree in the middle of the park. We went there loads and would lean against the tree trunk, do our homework, listen to music with one headphone, read books, basically anything relaxing. That's when he told me the shocking news. His dad had a new job in Germany, and they were moving there. What? How could this be? I was so surprised. I started crying. I expected him to comfort me, but instead he took out a pocket knife and started to carve on the tree. When he finished, he said, "Ta-da! How does it look?" He'd carve J Heart V in it. Oh gosh, he loved me too. I felt myself turn bright red and didn't want him to see me like that. So looking downward, I went to punch his arm but punched his face by mistake. Oops. Julian held his face and yelled, "Vanessa, what was that for?" I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Julian, I feel the same, I told him. We both started laughing, then we pinky promised each other that we would keep in touch. He took my hand and told me, "Ness, I'll come back for you, I promise." Then he leaned in and kissed me. And wow, it was truly magical. And then he left. The first few weeks without him were the hardest. I didn't really have any other friends, and I was so bored and lonely. I lived for my video calls with Julian. They were the only thing keeping me going. Telling him stuff that happened at school, such as how my math teacher wore the same hideous floral dress all week, made me feel like he was still there. Things went on like that for a while. It slowly became a habit for us to have a video chat at least twice a week. But then a couple of days after my 16th birthday, things changed. It was a normal Sunday morning and I woke up and went to wash my face. Ah! There were red spots all over my cheeks. I screamed so loudly that I woke everybody up. Even my neighbors had to run over and ask what the scream was about. My parents took me to the hospital and I was diagnosed with a disease called lupus. For all of you who don't know what it is, it's a skin disease that causes rashes or sores. In my case, it was all over my cheeks, the same as what my grandma had. Worst of all, there was no cure. The doctors could only improve the way my skin looked, prevent scarring, and help me feel better overall. This couldn't be happening. Why me? When we got home, I ran right upstairs to my room and stared into the mirror. I'd gone from pretty to ugly in the space of a day. It wasn't fair. And then suddenly my phone rang. It was Julian. Oh no, in all the drama, I'd forgotten about our planned video call. I couldn't let him see me like this. I was so exhausted with all this lupus stuff that I couldn't think of a solution. So I just turned my phone off. I texted him the next day that I was busy so I couldn't FaceTime with him. This carried on for weeks. I just couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. Then he texted me saying that he got the message loud and clear, that I didn't want to be his friend anymore. I texted him back telling him this wasn't the case and I'd just been super busy. But the damage was done. He stopped calling me after that and even unfriended me on Facebook. And that was it. I lost my best friend and also my first love, all because I couldn't cope with my new appearance. Little by little, I was shutting myself off and pushing everyone around me away. I just didn't want anyone to see me like this. Instead, I wanted to hide away from the world. Each day, I'd watch my classmates hang out together and I'd walk off by myself and go to my favorite tree, lean against the trunk, close my eyes, listen to some sad songs, and remember all the good times I had with Julian. This was basically part of my daily routine during the whole 4 years of high school. School finished and I moved away to college. Things got better. I made a few friends who accepted me for the way I looked, and slowly, I started to accept it too. There was this one tree on campus. It looked just like the one back at home, so I went there all the time. One day, I was sitting there reading a book when this guy in a baseball cap started measuring the ground. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Excuse me, can you please move?" I was confused, so I asked, sure, but why? The guy replied,
"Oh, the college is going to build a new cafeteria here, so we have to chop down this tree."
What? They wanted to chop down my favorite spot on campus just so that they could build some stupid cafeteria? No way! Who was this guy anyway? And didn't anyone ever tell him it was rude not to look people in the eyes when talking to them? I gave him a piece of my mind. You architects are all the same. You never give a damn about what you have to destroy to build an ugly building. Leave this tree alone or I'll chop you down. Then I gave him a really dirty look. He just shrugged and carried on measuring. This made me so mad that I kicked him in the butt, causing him to fall onto the ground. His cap fell off and whoa, it couldn't be. Julian? Was that really him? But how? Wasn't he in Germany? Why was he here? And why didn't he recognize me? I mean, I had a different haircut and all, but I didn't think I've changed that much. Or was it because of my lupus? Suddenly, I heard him say,
"What the? Are you mad? What's wrong with you?"
Oh gosh, I'd totally forgotten that he was still lying on the ground. I mumbled out a sorry and immediately rushed back to my dorm. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, all I could think about was Julian. He was so handsome and so tall. How could he have become so good looking? Why did this stupid disease pick me? There was my first love right in front of me after all those years apart. But because of my disease, he didn't know who I was. He blossomed and I hadn't. Maybe it was for the better that Julian didn't recognize me. If he knew this was how I look like now, oh boy, I didn't even want to imagine how embarrassed I would be. So, okay, let's just put it aside for now. What I first needed to do was save my tree. There's no way I was letting the college chop it down. I did some research and found out that the construction would begin in a week. So, I had time to convince as many students as I could to protest against it. And when the day came, I had about 20 people with me. We all held signs and said, "Save the tree" and "Stop the chop." The head of campus, Julian, and the construction workers were trying to make us leave, but we were persistent. At the end, they had to push back the construction dates. One of us remained by the tree at all times, come rain or shine. It was exhausting and cold, but it was worth it when the tree was saved. Then, one day when I was on tree guarding duty, my friend rushed over to me and excitedly told me that the college was going to change the location of the new building. That was such great news. Apparently, Julian had told them that the ground was more suitable in another location. Why would he help us all of a sudden? Did he have a change of mind? I went to class with those questions that kept bugging my mind, and right after school was out, I came over to the tree again, and to my surprise, I saw Julian standing next to it. I walked towards him and asked, "Why did you convince them to change the location of the building? I mean, we really appreciate it, but why the change of heart?" Julian froze for a second and then said, "Hey, it's Vanessa, back with the final part of my story. So, my first love Julian moved to Germany, and due to my insecurities, we lost touch. Then, years later, I saw him at my college campus, measuring my favorite tree to be chopped down. He didn't recognize me, but thanks to him, the tree was saved. He said to me,
"This tree must mean a lot to you, or else you wouldn't have fought so hard to save it. I had a tree like this once," he sighed. "Please continue to protect it."
I felt a pang in my heart. I knew he meant our tree back home. This was all so overwhelming. There I was looking at my first love, but he was oblivious to who I was. And I couldn't tell him because I was terrified that doing so would mean I'd lose him all over again. After that, I didn't see him around campus anymore. Was he living here now? Was he in another city? There were so many questions I wanted to ask him. Then my mom called and told me to come home for the weekend. I arrived there to find her setting out food in the kitchen. On seeing me, she said, "Oh, honey, I have a surprise for you. Julian and his family are back in town, and they're coming over for lunch." What? Oh, no. Why hadn't she told me sooner? I started to panic. What was I going to do now? I rushed to my room and tried to find anything I could use to cover my face. Finally, I found one thing. I heard my mom opening the door for Julian and his family. Then my mom cheerfully shouted, "Vanessa, where are you, sweetie? Come down. Julian is here, and oh my, he's so handsome." But my parents' smile soon disappeared as soon as they saw me coming down the stairs. They literally stood there with their mouths wide open. My mother stuttered, "Vanessa, what in God's name are you wearing?" Yeah, so the only thing I could find to cover my face was a face mask. Worse still, it had a smiling dog face on it. I know I look ridiculous, but at least my lupus was covered. Thinking fast, I muttered, I have a cold and I don't want anyone to catch it." Then I turned and saw Julian and my heart fluttered. He gave me a confused look. He clearly didn't know how to take my accessory. This was so awkward. The last memory he had of me was that I didn't want to video call with him anymore. And that was 5 years ago. Ugh, this sucked. I nodded at him and he nodded back. I caught him looking at me, no doubt because I was wearing that dumb mask. But we didn't actually speak to each other. Luckily, our parents were carrying the conversation. But then, my mom suggested that we should all go out for dinner tomorrow night. Mom, not again! Why didn't she realize that I needed to be pre-warned about these things? Then again, it was so easy for her as she had perfect-looking skin. Luckily, Julian's family were busy tomorrow. Phew! But they suggested having dinner the day after that. Ugh! Dinner was unavoidable, so I had to figure out a way of disguising my face. So, the evening of the dinner, I ran downstairs and my mom glared at me. "Vanessa, what on earth are you wearing? You look like Elton John." So yeah, I was wearing these huge fashion sunglasses. They were the only ones I could find online that I knew would arrive in time. I replied, "This is the new trend now. You're just too old to understand." At the restaurant, Julian and his family gave me the weirdest looks, but I acted like everything was normal and mentioned how good the food was. To be honest, I felt so awkward and just hoped this meal would be over soon. It all got a bit too much, so I went outside to get some fresh air. That's when Julian appeared. At first, he just stood there next to me in silence. It got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore, so I said, Since when did you come back here? He replied,
Since 1 month.
Feeling annoyed, I replied, Why didn't you call me?
Ness, you're the one who didn't want to be friends anymore.
Oh no, you got it all wrong. I had some problems, girl problems. I couldn't tell you.
You know, I was really lonely in Germany. You were the only friend I had.
His voice sagged. I replied, I know, it was stupid of me. I'm sorry, but you're back now. Can we be friends again? He looked at me for a bit, then smiled and said,
Seriously, how can I be mad at you now? I mean, look at you.
And then we hugged. I finally had my best friend back, but this wasn't enough for me. Seeing him again made me realize I still loved him even after all these years. My face was the problem. I was convinced that on seeing the real me, he'd run for the hills. After that, Julian and I texted each other loads, but then he asked me out on a date. At first, I was super excited, but then the reality of this dawned on me. I put on my prettiest dress, but as I stood in front of the mirror, all I saw were my bright red cheeks. Maybe I should just risk it. Maybe he would understand and still love me? I mean, it was inner beauty that counted, right? But no, I couldn't do it. So I messaged him back saying that I couldn't go out with him, but he was persistent. In the end, I ran out of excuses, so eventually I had to agree. Okay, so now what? I couldn't keep on wearing face masks and sunglasses. Then I had an idea. What about makeup? I knew it would make my skin worse, but this was an emergency. I put some makeup on, but the rashes were still visible, so I put more and more and more and I resembled Billy the Puppet from the Saw movies. Then there was a knock at the door. Oh no, he was here already! Oh well, I hope he likes horror movies. On seeing me, Julian looked kinda shocked, but he tried to act normal. The restaurant we went to was so nice, but every time he looked at me, he had to try his hardest not to laugh, which in turn made me want to laugh too. Awkward. Afterward, we went for a walk through the park when it suddenly began to rain. So we hurried over to our favorite big tree to take cover. Julian found the carving on the tree and said,
Do you remember this? That day I promised you I'd come back for you.
Then he turned to me, pulled me towards him. His face came closer and oh my god, was he going to kiss me? But then he stopped and said,
Oh Ness, your makeup is floating away. I have a tissue. Let me clean your face.
Wait, what? Oh no, not now. I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I hid my face from Julian and said, Don't look at me. Can you please go? Confused, he asked,
What? You're acting really weird. What's wrong?
Then he turned to look at my face. I pushed him away and said, No, I'm fine. I'm just having a girl problem moment. But Julian kept insisting, so I freaked out and ran into the rain. He ran behind me yelling,
Vanessa, stop!
I kept running, but then I tripped and my face fell into a muddy puddle. Oh, great! My whole face was covered with mud and my knee was bleeding, so I couldn't stand up. Julian had to help me hobble to the nearest drugstore to buy some bandages and some betadine to clean the wound for me. I sat on a bench feeling like a wounded puppy when he took out a tissue and started wiping the mud from my face. At first, I stopped him, but then he gave me a really serious look, so I let him clean my face. Well, that was it. Julian would finally see my face and he would definitely not want to date me anymore. While cleaning my face, he looked surprised. Then he said,
Wait a minute, you're going to college in Florida, right? Didn't I meet you like a few weeks ago on the campus? Why didn't you tell me it was you?
Because I didn't want you to see me like this. I turned my head away. He looked confused, so he asked,
Like what exactly? Ness, you're acting so weird.
What did he mean? Was he trying to make fun of me? So I shouted in anger, It's my face! Don't act like you don't see it. I was afraid that if you saw my face, you wouldn't want to be with me anymore. Julian shook his head and said,
No, Ness, why would I ever do that? To me, you will always be beautiful. Beauty isn't only about having a pretty face. It's about having a pretty mind, a pretty heart, and a pretty soul.
And then he kissed me on the forehead. Oh gosh, I never imagined that it would turn out like this. Julian was indeed the sweetest person ever, and I should have never have doubted him. Well, Julian and I became an official couple. Loving him makes me so happy. He makes me believe in myself and reminds me that regardless of my lupus, I'm still beautiful. And we will soon get married in a few months. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with him, happily ever after. So, as you can see, in the end, Julian was my first and my last love, which means my fairy tale dreams did come true. But let me tell you this, it's not important if you marry your first love or not. It's important that you marry someone who makes you happy and someone who accepts you for who you are. So, when you find someone like that, then hold on to them, whether this is your first or your 21st love.
Hi guys, I'm Chrissy, and my high school life took a drastic turn thanks to my crazy, overprotective mom. You see, my parents divorced when I was a little kid. I stayed with my mom, but she worked for the criminal investigation department, which meant she was super busy, so the house chores remained undone, and we lived off takeaways. Trust me, having pizza and egg fried rice every night isn't as good as it sounds. My grandparents could see that my mom was struggling to juggle her work and home life commitments, so I went to stay with them. I didn't mind this, as Mom always visited me on weekends. Besides, Grandma's meals are delicious. But then, Mom switched departments. She went from chasing criminals to handling paperwork at the station. Due to these changes in circumstances, she had far more time on her hands, so I moved back in with her. It's only by living with her that I realized just how different she is to me. Talk about my opposite, as she's strong, fierce, and impulsive. Basically, she's like a man, while I'm a sweet girly girl who loves wearing pretty clothes and watching cute movies. You can imagine my horror when I invited my bestie, Sharon, over, and Mom was walking around the house in a skull print tank top, ripped jeans, and biker boots. She looked like she was going on a bike rally. Yeah, this was just her usual style, but I was expecting she would at least act normal for once when we had a guest around. It was so cringe. She was almost 40, not 15. Then, on my first day of high school, Mom insisted she take me there and pick me up, as she was worried there might be troublemakers on the bus. Yep, I know, this was ridiculous. I mean, how delicate does she think I am? But I didn't want to upset her, so I reluctantly agreed. School's out, and I was chatting with my friends while waiting for my mom to show up when we suddenly heard the sound of a motorbike engine coming toward the school. Me and my friends got excited and whistled as we thought a cute guy was passing by. But then they stopped near us and took off their helmet. I literally wanted to faint. It was my beloved mother. Oh, sweet Jesus! What on earth was she doing? My mom shouted with joy. "Hey, Chrissy, get on!" Then she held a spare helmet out to me. I swear, it was like the whole school was outside watching us. How embarrassing! When we arrived home, I asked her where the bike had come from. She replied, "What? Oh, you mean Eleanor? I just bought her last week. The weather is so nice today, so I thought I would bring her along." Yes, you heard her right. My mom named the bike after Eleanor Roosevelt. Unbelievable! The embarrassment didn't end there. Oh no. One day, my teacher informed us that tomorrow after school was a parent-teacher conference. I couldn't have Mom turning up in a teenage rebel outfit, so I searched her closet for something mom-like. Nope. All my mom owned were t-shirts, ripped shorts, and crop tops. Ugh! So I went online and found this beautiful blue dress, then I told her to buy it. The next day after school, I waited for Mom in my form room. All the parents were already there, only my mom was missing. I was about to call her when suddenly somebody walked into the room. Oh my God! Someone, please knock me out right now. It was my mom, and you wouldn't believe what she was wearing. No, it wasn't the blue dress. Instead, it was this super skinny black leather dress, black sunglasses, 10-inch high heels, and a black choker necklace. She looked like she belonged in a vampire movie. Everyone was gawping at her. I think some of the dads were even drooling a bit. When I confronted her about it, she just shrugged and said, "Sweetie, this dress is much more my style than that mumsy blue one." Now this was officially
officially my #1 most embarrassing moment ever. Thanks, Mom. Why couldn't she be like me? I mean, I was starting to think that I was the adult here, not her. The embarrassment didn't end there. Instead, she took it to a whole new level. My school was planning a camping trip, and I was so excited about it. Mom wanted to come along and supervise, but I firmly said no. She started saying, "But honey, you don't know how dangerous the woods are. What if you got bitten by a snake? Do you know how to handle that?" "I don't think so." What? She was just being ridiculous again. We argued for a while, but in the end, she agreed to let me go without her. The trip was so much fun, and some cute boys asked Sharon and me if we wanted to go for a swim in the lake. Of course, we said yes. I mean, look at them. They were so cute. Suddenly, I heard screaming. It was Sharon. She said someone was hiding in the bushes and watching us. That was so creepy. The cute boys said they'd go and check it out, but then this person jumped out of the bush and did a judo throw on them. Wait a minute. I know that move. Could it be? Oh no! It was my mom! What was she wearing? She was in full army gear. She even had binoculars. Jeez, Mom, what were you doing looking like a G.I. Joe? I couldn't hold my tears and I cried out, "Oh my God, why can't you leave me alone? You're ruining everything!" Then I ran back to the camp. She left after that, but I felt so embarrassed for the rest of the trip. When I returned home, my mom immediately said sorry to me and swore that something like that would never happen again. Okay, I could see in her eyes that she really meant it, so I would give her another chance. She calmed down a lot after that, and even let me go to school by myself. Well, that was big progress, don't you think? Soon after that, I started to date this boy named Kevin, and boy, was he hot! He was one of the popular kids at school, so I still couldn't believe he chose me. I don't know how Mom found out about him, but she did, and she insisted on inviting him over for dinner. I made her agree not to do anything crazy. I mean, what was the worst that could happen? The dinner was going well, until we got to dessert. Then Mom started asking him awkward questions, like, "Kevin, how many girls have you dated?" And, "I assume you two have health classes at school? Or should I remind you of some important facts?" Oh, sweet Jesus, Mom! Her questions were beyond embarrassing. Kevin just sat there with a super awkward smile on his face and didn't answer. But then Mom announced it was very late and practically shoved him out of the house. It was only 8:30 p.m. After he left, I went straight to my mom and we started arguing. "Mom, you agreed not to do anything crazy. Why can't you act like a normal mom?" She replied, "Oh, honey, that Kevin guy is really cute, but he's not good for you. I know his type. They only want to take advantage of girly girls like you." What? Girly girls like me? What was that supposed to mean? I shouted back, "You're doing it again! You're being overprotective. That's because you're not tough enough. If you wouldn't be so girly and be a badass like your mom, I wouldn't have to protect you all the time." I stormed up to my room and slammed the door shut. I was so going to prove to her that she was wrong about Kevin and that I didn't need her protection. Fortunately, Mom hadn't scared Kevin off. Phew! He told me that his parents were super embarrassing too. One evening, Kevin took me to this nice restaurant. There were candles, live music, and the food was delicious. It was so romantic. Then he touched my hand and leaned in closer. This was so exciting. I was about to have my first kiss. Suddenly, someone banged on the table nearby and ruined the moment. That's when I noticed they had a keychain on their bag that looked exactly like the one I'd made once at summer camp. I stood up and walked toward the table. A middle-aged lady with blonde hair and sunglasses was sitting there. I tried to look at her face, but it was like she was avoiding me. I took a closer look, and I couldn't believe it. I ripped the wig off her head, and yes, it was my beloved mother again! To be honest, I didn't want to argue with her anymore. Today was proof that she just couldn't change. So I just said in a calm voice, "I hate you, Mom. You're the worst mom ever."
Then I grabbed Kevin's arm and ran out of there. Okay, maybe what I said was a bit harsh, but she just ruined what would have been my first kiss. I couldn't concentrate on our date after that, so I asked Kevin to take me home. But to my surprise, he drove me back to his place. Uh-oh, I knew what that meant. But I wasn't ready for any of that yet, so I told him I'd get an Uber. Suddenly, he grabbed my arm and tried to drag me into his house. I couldn't believe this was actually happening. Mom was so right about him. I was freaking out. But then suddenly, I remembered something important that she'd taught me, so I used her signature judo move on him. It worked, as he laid on the ground and groaned out in pain. Ha! And that's when my mom arrived on her motorbike. As soon as I saw her, I ran over to her, hugged her tight, and cried like a baby in her arms. You must be wondering how my mom found me. Well, when Kevin came by to have dinner, she pickpocketed his phone and hacked it so she had access to all his messages and location. So after I dragged him out of the restaurant, he texted his friends saying he was trying to get in bed with me at all costs, which my mom saw, so she rushed to rescue me. Oh God, Mom, that was so not okay. But what could you expect from a criminal investigator? When we arrived home, we had a serious talk. To my surprise, she admitted that she was wrong about me. She saw now that I was able to take care of myself. That judo move I did on Kevin really impressed her. See? Girly girls can kick some butt too. So from that moment on, things between us improved lots. Turns out, my mom isn't so annoying after all. I realize now that she's pretty cool, and all the things she did were just to protect me. Okay, so maybe she took it to the extreme levels, but she did it with good intentions. Thanks to my mom, I feel stronger now. You know what they say, I'm a strong woman because a strong woman raised me. Although, one thing's for sure, I won't be borrowing her clothes anytime soon.
Family. They're complicated. Right. I used to think my family was happy as can be. Nope. Just like when a water balloon gets too big and then explodes, Mom and Dad split up just after one big, fat, dumb fight. After that, my dad moved out. Me and my little sis Katie were given a hard choice. One of us would stay here with Mom, and the other would go live with Dad and his new girlfriend, Zara. Katie's really sweet, kind, and sensitive, so I didn't think uprooting her life and making her live with some new stepmommy would be a good idea. I'm a big bro. Protecting my little sis is what I do best. So when it was settled, Katie stayed with Mom, and I moved in with Dad and Zara. Fast forward a few months, and Mom fell in love with some dude named Glenn and married him. I wasn't sure about Glenn. I'd only met him a couple of times, but he seemed too smug for my liking. Anyway, back to Dad's, it turns out my life with them was a breeze. They let me go out when I wanted, barely made me do any house chores. Instead, Zara was not a mean person. She treated me like family. And for my 16th birthday, she even suggested my dad to surprise me with my very own car. Happy days. But there was one snag. From my sis's messages, I sensed things weren't quite so rosy with her. So I went around to show her my new car. Well, really this was just an excuse to go and check things out. I strolled into the house to find Katie emptying the dishwasher. She was crying. I mean, I know house chores suck, but they weren't bad enough to bring someone to tears. Something was up. I made her a drink, and we both sat down and talked. She told me that it was Glenn. He didn't like her and kept getting her into trouble. Katie said, "He always considered me as a thorn in his eyes because he wanted Mom to spend full time with him. He demanded that I do all the house chores, and then when Mom got home from work, he'd say he did them. If I tried to question him on this, he'd get me into trouble by telling lies to Mom about me. Such as one time he said I cursed at him and stole $20 from his wallet." I didn't like the sound of this, so I asked her, "Have you tried telling Mom what's going on?" She nodded her head and blubbed out, "Yes, she says I'm just lazy and jealous." I replied, "Sounds like Mom's blinded by love. Don't worry, sis, she'll come around and see sense soon." She sniffed back tears and said, "I hope so, Rory, as things really suck here." I told her to let me know the next time Glenn did anything sneaky. Whoa, turns out this guy likes to play dirty. A few days later, he switched the cooking oil for whiskey, so when Mom started the cooking, The whole thing went up in flames. Then Glenn rushed to the rescue and blamed Katie, saying he'd seen her holding the whiskey bottle last night, but presumed she was just trying to sneak some. Then he told Mom that Katie had insisted he cook her steak, so the prank must have been meant for him. Mom instantly believed him over Katie and punished her by making her miss her school dance and having to do house chores instead. Poor Katie, she was so upset. But then a week later, sneaky Glenn struck again. This time Katie saw him switching Mom's diet mayo for the full fat stuff. Katie rushed to get Mom to catch him red-handed, but when she arrived, she saw him spreading diet mayo in her bagel. Mom shouted at Katie for saying untrue things about her stepdad and grounded her again. This sucked. My sis was the sweetest girl, and she doesn't deserve this. Not to mention the fact that some of these pranks sound dangerous. Well, not so much the mayo one, but the fire one could have ended so badly. This Glenn dude needed to stop with the games, and it was about time I showed him that no one messes with my little sis. So I suggested we switch things up for a couple weeks. Katie would go and live with Dad and get to know Zara, and I'd go and live with Mom and get to know Glenn. It's clear Glenn knew he couldn't mess with me, so for the first week he stayed out of my way. I used this time to refuel, relax, enjoy Mom's cooking, and plot my revenge. When the second week arrived, I was ready to make Glenn's life a misery. Tough lucky, Glenny boy. Mom was working extra hard as Glenn had lost his job. So, being the good son I am, I drove her to the grocery store. Mom was so happy with my help, and she promised to make my favorite omelet. When we got home, Mom called Glenn to come and help carry the bags inside. He tried to impress her by carrying them all at once, but one of them split open and groceries went everywhere, including the box of eggs. Oops! Mom was furious and shouted at him. That's what you get for trying to show off and be a strong man. Now I can't have an omelet for my dinner, and I was looking forward to that. Haha, seeing his dumbfounded expression was so funny. Yep, I cut a hole into the bottom of the bag so that would happen. I wasn't finished with him yet, no chance. So in the next few days, when Mom left super early for work, I poured cornflakes everywhere, threw dirty laundry onto the floor, put the dog bowl on top of the couch, and stomped around in my dirty sneakers. I even took the breakfast Mom had prepared for Glenn to school with me, so I knew he'd wake up hungry, then spent all day having to tidy up my mess. Ha! Naturally, Glenn wasn't happy with me, so when I got back from school, he forced me to mow the lawn. This guy looked so tired spending the entire day clearing out my stuff, so fine by me. As when Mom came home and saw me, I gasped for breath and said, I had a busy day with schoolwork, but Glenn still made me do all the chores. I'm so tired, Mom. Mom rushed inside and found Glenn watching cartoons. Then she yelled at him. You're home all day, so why don't you mow the lawn instead of making my son do it? I had to go to work. My boy had to do the chores. So what exactly is your role in this house? Glenn was speechless. It didn't end there, as Mom was so mad she made him sleep on the couch. Glenn avoided me after this, but that wasn't enough. I had to make sure that he'd leave my sis alone. I needed to make Glenn realize that his jerky ways were wrong. I knew Mom and Glenn had a piggy bank in their room for their future kid fund. So when they weren't around, I snuck into their room, smashed open the piggy bank, and hid the money in Glenn's jacket. That night after dinner, I asked Mom if I could borrow her headphones. So she went into her room to grab them. Just then, Glenn grabbed his jacket and was about to go somewhere. The moment he stepped out the door, we heard a frantic scream upstairs. It was my mom. She must have found the broken piggy bank and ran downstairs, yelling at Glenn. He stood in the doorway confused, but then she checked his pockets and voila! There was the money. She angrily waved it in front of his face. What's this, huh? You're gonna go out spending the savings for our kid, right? You're making no money, so stop ruining everything. They took their argument outside, and I went up to my room and watched through the window. Suddenly, a car pulled up, and out stepped this well-dressed girl. Oh, wow, it was Katie. She ran over to Mom and hugged her. Then, Dad and Zara appeared. Turns out Katie had had a great time at Dad's. Zara had always wanted a daughter, so when Katie came, she was so happy and had taken her shopping, got her hair done, and spoiled her. When Mom looked at her own daughter having a better life with her stepmom, I was pretty sure she realized how bad she was. I could see her ashamed face. I rushed downstairs and greeted my sis. Then I turned to Mom and said, Mom, you should care for Katie more. You see, Glenn even treated me badly. You don't know how hard he was with her. We love you, so please trust Katie like you trust me. Then I turned to Glenn. You're her husband, but it doesn't mean you can replace us in our mom's heart. Mommies always love their children best. Don't be childish and try to separate them or I'll come back. I winked at him. Yeah, okay, he grunted. Then he turned to Katie and said, I'm sorry, Katie. What do you say to us starting again? Katie smiled sweetly and said, okay, I'd like that. It looks like I'd save the day. Now Glenn knew that if he ever messed with Katie again, then I'd be back. After that, Mom still made Glenn do all the chores, but Katie, being the sweet girl that she is, helped him out with them. As for me, I went back to life at Dad's. I went around there more often to check on Katie and give Mom a lift to the grocery store. And Katie even came around for barbecues and to have a girly pamper session with Zara. So in the end, everything worked out, and now we're one big, crazy, dysfunctional family. But hey, as long as everyone's happy and doesn't try to mess with my little sis, then it's all good with me.